Hello and welcome to the 8th in this series of training videos on measuring performance in the public sector. My name is Mark Robinson and these videos are brought to you by the European Union. Our focus in this session is going to be on performance targets. What we mean by a performance target can be best illustrated with a couple of examples. Suppose the government and the Education Ministry committed itself to increasing the literacy rate at the end of primary school from 63%, where it is now, to 80% within the next 5 years. If it did so, it would be setting a performance target. Suppose the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that within the next year, its aim was to reduce the unit cost of issuing a passport by 5%. Again, it would be setting a target. So, a target has two characteristics. The first is that it sets an explicit aim for the level of performance to be attained, a numerically specified objective. In the case of the literacy rate target, it is to achieve a rate of 80%. In the case of the passport processing cost target, it is a reduction in cost of 5%. The second characteristic of a target is that there is a clear timeline for the achievement of the aim. The timeline could be a year, as in the passport example. It could be medium term, 3 or 5 years, as in the case of the literacy rate target. Or we could even have a long-term target set, for example, over a 10-year frame. It's possible to set targets for both outputs and outcomes, and indeed at a managerial level, targets could also be set for activities or for inputs. Let's take some Ugandan target examples. In Uganda, medium-term and long-term outcome targets are set in the National Development Plan and in Vision 2040. These are targets for things such as increasing income per capita, reducing the rate of poverty, or increasing GDP growth rate. And in each case, there is a clear numerical target and a clear timeline for the achievement of that target. As these examples show, these are generally targets for high-level outcomes. Targets are also set in the Ugandan Budget Framework paper, although in the most recent one, these are targets only for outcomes and no longer for outputs. It's important to clearly distinguish targets and performance indicators. Again, let's take an example, the example of targets and indicators in relation to breast cancer. The survival rate of breast cancer sufferers after 12 months is a performance indicator. The aim of increasing the survival rate by 30% over the next decade is a performance target. As this example indicates, all targets are based on performance indicators, but targets are not indicators. Indicators are simply measures. They don't set goals or timelines. It's important also not to confuse targets with objectives. Governments set many objectives which are unquantified and which lack timelines. For example, the government might commit itself to reducing poverty, but without specifying by how much or by what date. In this case, it would be specifying an objective which does not qualify as a target. Similarly, if the police minister emphasized publicly that he was committed to increasing the success rate of police criminal investigations, but again without specifying by how much or by when, this would qualify as an objective. So to be a target, something always has to have a quantified aim and a timeline for achieving that aim. Well, that brings us to the end of this session in which our focus has been on performance targets. As we've seen, performance targets are aims which are quantified and which have a clearly defined timeline for their achievement. and they're to be contrasted with performance indicators, which are merely measures. However, all performance targets are based on underlying performance indicators.